the continued public hearing on ATM zoning bylaws and amendments.
Make a motion. Need a second.
Second.
Any discussion? It's for MBTA because we've already done the other one. So roll call vote, Mr. Buasi,
Aye.
Mr. English,
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Maloney,
Aye.
Mr. Woodhams.
Aye.
Mike McKnight, aye. 6 in favor, 1 absent, no one opposed. Motion carries. This may be quick. I'm not sure, Rachel. We don't have. Well, why don't we start with what the update is? There's a meeting coming up and anything that you may know, because I don't have any new information, I don't think.
So I attended the select board meeting yesterday, and they this was after the meeting, but it's going to be April 30th at 7 p.m. We settled on a location, the King Philip High School cafeteria. I'll double check that, but I think that's what it was. No food will not be served for this.
Good to know.
Cafeteria. However, the select board has made it clear that they want the full planning board at this meeting, or there's no meeting at all, which I think is very sweet, you know. So what's going to happen is you'll have to continue this public hearing to that April 30th at 7 p.m. At the King Philip cafeteria.
Well,
And then
that's
we
a
can-
very interesting twist. I'm just going to ask a question, Mr. Winter. Do we need Mr. Winter anymore? Can we release him to go do more?
I may have a
things?
question. I may have a question more so on the events, because it's technically, and we can talk about this later, just sort of like how things happen, because it's technically a planning board meeting, because it's their public hearing. So we're going to have to do a little dance is all. So we can talk about that.
If I'm not mistaken, you and I are going to have to discuss a lot of things tomorrow.
So many things.
And so could we
I
add
thought
that
I
to
had
the
a day
list?
off. I thought I had a day off from meeting.
Oh, what?
Yeah, no.
Thanks, guys. Okay.
So is there, I guess the relevant question here is there any planning board member who is on this call, because there's one who isn't, that cannot make that meeting that night because
I will
that
be out
clears
of
that
town.
deal?
I am definitely out of town on the 30th, so I will not be there.
And can he be there by a Zoom beamed in from outer space thing?
I cannot. I am at
Okay.
a business meeting for 2 days, and there's an event that night. And
You're far enough away and busy enough that you're not available. Got it.
Yeah, and it's
Correct.
going to be in the cafeteria, so there's not going to be there's going to be no technology.
No
There'll
AV.
be lights
No
and
AV.
chairs. That's it.
What's very interesting is we've got a working group set up with an alternate. The initial intent of this was a working group with the Board of Selectmen and maybe the EDC, because I think they wanted them so that they weren't quorums.
Also, the school committee is coming now.
Can I
Um,
ask a question? What
Seems-
exactly is the point of all of this? Having now the school committee as well completely involved, and what
And also department
what
heads
is
as well.
and so what is the stated purpose of this meeting? What is it that they're hoping to accomplish by having basically a group meeting with multiple boards over a zoning issue?
So I was just going to try and find an email from, so Amanda had sent out an email to like the school committee, and I think one other school committee, Chief McGrath, Chief Marino, and somebody from KP as well, asking, the select board is hosting a zoning workshop meeting regarding MBTA multifamily zoning bylaw. They would like for you to share any data, insight, perspective on how 750 units could impact your department's effectiveness, headcount, budget, and any other factors to the town. Other invitees include the Planning Board, Economic Development Commission, Wrentham School Committee, King Philip School Committee, Board of Assessors, Public Safety, and Department of Public Works.
We're not gonna bring in like
But-
open space and recreation.
And I didn't see the Housing Authority either on there. So,
Wow.
you know,
That seems like a missing.
But so it's an information meeting, but when we open a public hearing, it doesn't feel like this is the right place to have a planning board joint, planning board, Board of Selectmen hearing. I just doesn't feel like that's where our place should be in this.
they want you to be there so that way you understand, are taking into full account all of the other potential impacts that could happen from this project. And they want all these other committees to be there as well. This is just what
send our working committee to that meeting and not a full board meeting.
And they are not interested in that.
Well,
They need
could
us
have-
all
we could
there
have-
and we can't all be there. So how are they gonna sort that out?
We could have a working group from each of those organizations. Planning Board, Select Board, King Philip School Committee, Wrentham School Committee, could each assign a working group so that it's not a public hearing, and we could actually do some work. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, after the last, I'm gonna call it a fiasco, that was supposed to have been a working group that turned into, to me, a big showcase. It didn't accomplish anything. And if that's what this is setting up to be, I don't really have a lot of interest in it.
I'm with you. This has gone very different from the way we set the working group up and had a discussion. The other thing is we have a planning board meeting on Wednesday night,
Right.
the night after. So we recommending to post for a meeting on the 30th for this, and then we're gonna post for another meeting on the 1st for all of our business. Doesn't make sense. We can take a vote, but if I'm not there, I'm happy to have the rest of the working committee with the alternate, Mr. English, go as a subcommittee of the planning board, if you guys want, but not to go as a full board planning board and open a public hearing.
So I move that we authorize the Director of Awesomeness to reply to Amanda's email saying the full planning board is unable to attend this meeting as you require. Therefore, we would like an alternative suggestion. Is that a
Or you could say
apolitic thing for you to say if we ask you to?
well, we could go as far as to say we're happy to send, if Mr. Woodhams, you're willing to go to that as one of the working members.
If it's gonna be a working group, working meeting, that I'm willing to go. I'll go either way. I'm not interested in sitting there and listening to people grandstand for an hour about.
What if their idea of a
Not
working
accomplished.
meeting is an airing of grievances? I'm serious. I mean, it's
Shall I
like,
bring, shall I
come
bring the
prepared to
grievance
talk
poll?
about the impact that this would have on your group. Well, it sounds like it's gonna be an airing of grievances, or maybe it's gonna be a very interesting information, chock full of information meeting. I feel like each of those groups could write a 2-page summary or a 5-page summary of what the impacts would be, and we could put it in the documentation for this public hearing, and anybody interested could read it and find it, and we could, if they had to, we could have it read out at in this planning board as part of the hearing, as part of the public record. And And then all of that information that they have concerns about will be a part of the public record, which it feels to me is what they want. Right, that their concerns are a part of our public record for this meeting. And that we take them into consideration when we vote, which I think is reasonable. It's just how we get from here to there. Their process and our process just kind of aren't matching up, is how I feel about it. I may be missing something.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I think
Yes.
it's, whatever we do, I understand your concerns too, and I'm a little bit hesitant to declare a public meeting, but I do think we should be represented. The meeting has been called, it's going to go forward. We'd be remiss if we didn't send somebody. So then maybe we just send our working group and said that's just going to go, if that's what you want. If you can't be there anyway, Mr. Chairman, to tell you the truth, that it probably would not be wise for us to do a full meeting, rather just send 3 people, and you've already assigned them. I think at the last meeting, you assigned a substitute for yourself on this working committee.
I couldn't
Thank you.
agree with you more, Tom. The problem I have is with this line in that email or whatever, if we can't all be there, it will not happen.
Well, then it doesn't happen. But
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. That's why
this is what we can
I'm
do. We'll send
suggesting
a
that
delegation
we
of
have
3,
her
so we do
reply
not have
that
to
way
declare a
to the
public meeting,
email.
and that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
Rachel, this was originally set up because we sent a note saying, when is the working group meeting? That was my understanding of how the 30th came to be. Correct?
Yes.
So that was the request. If they can't do that and have the working group be together with the EDC's working group and the Board of Selectmen's working group and whoever else we want to have as a working group, then I agree. Then we can recommend that we're going to send our working team members and they will report back to the board on our public hearing on the 1st. Shy of that, then, maybe it's not going to be a collaborative event in the town, and the planning board's going to have to do what it does to make the recommendation independently. I mean, maybe this isn't going to work the way we thought it was going to work.
So I'm going to make a motion, and my motion is that, go ahead.
Sorry. So before you do that, the select board has also requested that the planning board include in their review of these sites the outlets, and then one other parcel, so that we have an even 10 to review. And similar, I think you had said this at a separate meeting, Jim, sort of take a back out look and then come back in. And so we're going to take all of them fresh and then come back in, but they want to have 10 in total. The outlets is 1, so that gets us to 9. So we need 1 more. And I am including the 8 that have already been presented to you as the board.
Yeah.
That's reasonable.
Okay, so we got 2 more, just taking off 1 more filter kind of idea that I had.
No, you don't. That's just one they want to be included in the review. So no.
Okay.
This wasn't included in any of the reviews because within the guidelines, it says you can only on an underutilized property, and the outlets is an underutilized property. Again, how I understand an underutilized property to be. So that was never included. But they want it to be, they've requested the planning board include that in their review of these sites. They've requested them to add it to your list of 8. But they've also asked, I think, for 10 sites in total to be looked at. So if you know of another one that's not on that list, please send it to me, or send it to the select board if you don't want to send it to me.
No, we want you in
Send it to
this.
somebody.
We want you in this.
Outlets and what else?
The outlets was the recommendation that the select board, or
Okay.
the request that the select board had for the planning board to look at.
It feels like at our next meeting, we ought to dig into this again. You've done the work with the peer reviewer. We looked at some sites, but it feels like as a planning board, we should take the process and say, okay, let's dig deeper into that. Let's review why you excluded certain sites and get more into that review so that we can all feel comfortable that what we're going to recommend to go forward, which I think is our obligation, is we're aligned with as a board. Whether that aligns with what everybody else in the town wants to know or hear, whatever, that can be taken up on town meeting floor.
Right.
right? This is
Yeah,
gonna get
and I-
voted on. All we do is make a recommendation for a positive, a neutral, or negative. But it feels like we should bring forward a proposal on where we think this could fit, and then let the rest of the process take its course.
Right.
But I think that's our obligation, Mr. Chairman. That's, you know, it's just, but I do think, Rachel, if this, we'll give the select board, I think, enough, a certain amount of latitude here. I don't want to get pushed around either, but I do think it's fair for them to say, look, there's a major parcel in this town that was not considered in the first go around. Let's look at it again. I don't mind taking a step back on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it means a little more work for the staff, and I appreciate that. They did a great job. And have done a great job up till now. But if it means we take a step back and we expand the scope a little bit, and then we bring it in and say, look, just because you requested this, we'll do it. This is why we prefer this to that or this to that. But as the chairman says, and then we take it to town meeting. You know,
Right.
And so I don't think it's an unreasonable request. I don't think we're getting pushed around by it, but make it clear that we're doing this because you requested it. Here's what we have. And you know, let's, I think, Mr. Chairman, we're going to town meeting in the fall with this, isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay.
unless they decide there's a special town meeting, that's
Right.
still up in the
But
air.
even
I
that would
also-
be in the fall. They're trying to go as late as they can to keep their options open, which is fine.
You
Yeah,
know, Jim, I'll tell you, if it's me, I would probably do a town meeting dedicated to this one issue. And I realize it means setting up 2 town meetings in the fall, but you've been to the November town meetings, which we have to do by bylaws, and they'll have 17 articles on them. So
Yeah.
some of which will be ours, and then you're going to have this. So we're just talking here.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think
I
the
mean, then you-
immediate
but-
issue is this meeting on the 30th, right? We need to notify them. So my motion is that we authorize the Director of Awesomeness to notify the Board of Selectmen that we cannot comply with their request to have all board members present. And we would be happy to send the available members of the working subcommittee that we've already communicated to them are standing ready to participate. And
Second.
then they can decide what to do about the meeting. And, you know, then we'll go from there. But I think at the minimum, we have to reply to them, particularly since we can't comply. We need to let them know. If they're not going to hold something, the sooner everybody knows, nobody's rearranging schedules to be there.
That's your motion. I heard a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Boissy,
Aye.
Mr. English,
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Maloney,
Aye.
Mr. Woodhams.
I didn't hear
Sorry.
you. I don't know why. He's saying aye. I can see.
He's
that
saying
votes
aye.
Aye, but give us a thumbs up, Chuck. Give us, okay.
Yeah,
there
we
go.
have a thumbs up aye from Mr. Woodhams, Mike McKnight, aye, 6 in favor, 1 absent. No one opposed.
I think
Right.
Can I ask a quick sorry.
I hear you now, Chuck. Yes.
I think my earbud
Yeah,
died.
This public hearing is still open, so if you want to talk about MBTA communities, certainly can do that.
Just quick question. For Milton commissioned an economic impact study that let them see what the impact would be. That's probably more of a select board thing, but you can
So
read it.
that-
Like,
Yeah, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, but they had a site in mind with that. It wasn't just
Okay.
all of zoning, so it's kind of difficult to tell you without a project, you know, a location to really tell. You'd have to do that feasibility for each and every one of those sites, which may be a little bit onerous. It will get very costly, and yes, Milton bankrolled that on their own.
okay, because it
There
did
was-
include, impact on schools and a whole host of things. So people can then decide what they think.
Probably the basis for the source of the groups that, because the selectmen are in communication with the select board is in communication with the other towns about how they're approaching this.
I think, Rachel, it wasn't the attorney from Linfield going to be there on the 30th, Mr. Miller, I think.
No, he is not. He would rather not meet in a public meeting. So
Okay.
that's the last
He
I
wants a
heard.
working group.
He wants the working group. That's right.
Well, I
Right,
will
that's the last
say,
I heard about it.
I
Right.
believe it did show a positive economic impact, but you know, some people had issues with the methodology, but it made, you can follow it and makes logical sense. And
You know, the thing is, Alfred, that's,
Yeah.
you make a good point on it. It's just, I think what the law does though, is it straitjackets the towns, the guidelines rather, not the legislation. That's what Milton's actually arguing, but it does straitjacket the towns in some ways. For example, there's some of these areas that we've looked at, Rachel, that I think would be good for development, but 15 units per acre might be too much. I think it's the kind of thing where if the towns, if they offer incentives to the towns, then what can you do to help us to mitigate this housing shortage? We could help, but the towns are going to have to say, but they have to be we have to have some say in how it's done. You know,
Well-
we have restrictions too that the state might not be aware of.
Well, so the state has allowed us to zone for this type of housing and for more housing for years. You know, as if you've watched Chris Clutchman present to the select board, we've had the 40R zoning, which is a smart growth zoning, and has a lot of incentives as part of that. They give you sort of a starting out some seed money with an approved district, and then you know, if you know, kids are sort of added in, money towards that as well, and nobody's taken advantage of it. And so that's kind of where the state is at right now, is that we've left this up to towns and it hasn't happened. And so while they're asking is to create a zone, they understand that not all communities are going to have water infrastructure, not all communities are going to be on sewer, they're going to have on-site septic, and all those are going to take away from your ultimate developable amount of land. So while on paper it's going to say 15 units per acre is your density, if you have to put in a septic treatment plant and a huge leaching field, you're not going to be able to meet that 15 units per acre. You know, that's going to take away, that's going to eat up your land area. You know, and they understand that. They're just asking for the mechanism, which is zoning in this case, to allow for it and have the market go with it. And I will say the downtown has been rezoned with a lot of yes uses since 2018. And we've yet to see an actual project, an actual application, I would say, come in. So
well, then maybe
it's going to take a while.
Maybe the state should take the cue from that. You're right about 40R. In fact, the town I lived in prior to coming here had the first 40R project in the state. It was a renovation of an old church property. It came out fine, but maybe the state's own restrictions are what the problems are. For example, I mean, making it dependent on transit probably is not a good idea. Most of the places that are around transit are already built up. You know, I drove on Mass Ave in Arlington a few days ago. You can't build anymore there. And Arlington's very enthusiastic about this thing, but you can't do it. So you're never going to get the unit count that you want by demanding that new units be built in the most congested areas. They've also seemed to have a bias against single family homes, which is what people want to live in. And if they don't want to live in it when they're 25, they're going to want to live in them when they're 35 and they have children. So that's why I think probably anchoring this thing to the worst transportation system in the country probably is not good salesmanship. But you know, we'll see.
Yeah.
I think it would be better if you went to the towns and said, look, here's the number we'd like to get to in 15 years. We will offer incentives in the form of Chapter 90 additional funding or mass works or something. We'll give you more. It's not that we'll withhold, we'll give you more if you work with us. And if you come up with a plan, I think you'd have more results and you get more units. And after all, they're the ones who are saying we have a crisis. They said we have a crisis. We'll help you.
Sounds like you need somebody to drive you to the State House, Mr. Maloney.
Yeah. I mean,
you can work that magic.
Look at this. I don't know that this particular venue really has a lot of bearing on how they listen to that, but I like your approach.
The hour's getting late. We're in MBTA Communities Open Public Hearing. Do we have anybody from the public here to speak on this tonight? Hearing none. Do we have any other Any other conversation here, or do we want to continue this to
I
our
move we
next?
continue the public hearing on the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District to, we want
May
to
fir-
take another bite at this on May 1st
May 1st.
at 7:15.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second,
Any discussion? Roll call vote, Mr. Boissy,
Aye.
Mr. English,
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Maloney, Mr. Woodhams,
aye.
Mike McKnight, aye. 6 in favor, 1 absent, no one opposed, motion carries. I think that's it. Mr. Winter, thank you very much for spending all this time with us tonight.
Please, yeah.
It's, we needed
Pleasure's all
some-
mine.
We
I
needed
hope
some
you
help
had as
and
much fun
guidance.
as we did.
Thank you. Last comment was just, there's
Hi,
not many
Brian.
people
Good night,
listening
everybody.
here, but for the record, the town of Wrentham, we had a nice going away party for our last 3 board members. The town of Wrentham honored Mr. Skinner with a, what is it called? Not a certificate, a
Declaration.
declaration for his service and his years of giving back. So we want to get that into the
No one
record.
deserves it more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other business before the board?
I'll move you adjourn. Oh, wait a minute. You have a hand up.
No. If it's wait a minute, did we?
We're
did-
closed.
Continued.
We already closed MBTA communities. We don't